Texans don't follow, Texans lead. And Jace Yarbrough has never backed down from a fight. A seventh-generation Texan, husband and father of 5, an Air Force officer still serving in the reserves. Rooted in faith, built by family, tested in service, stepping up when it matters most. And today, the fight is here at home. While Democrats try to pull this country apart, Jace slammed the brakes on their radical agenda, suing woke extremists, shutting down their mandates, and blocking the left from reshaping Texas. When Biden pushed woke onto our military, Jace stood firm, refusing to let Washington weaken the values and God-given freedoms that keep America strong. And when Democrats targeted President Trump with election scams, Jace deployed to protect our president. But the threats keep moving closer. A border tested every day. Our daughters told to accept biological boys in their locker rooms. Parents sidelined while bureaucrats muscle in. Because the danger isn't just at the border. It's in the Washington swamp, where insiders think Texas is something to manage, not respect. Jace Yarbrough knows better.
I'm Jace Yarbrough. I've spent my life serving this country, and now I'm ready to serve Texas in Congress. I'll stand with President Trump to keep our border secure, put America first, and protect our conservative values, ones rooted in faith, freedom, and self-reliance. That's why I'm running, and that's the fight I'm ready to lead.
Jace Yarbrough for Congress.
DC's problems are big. Cost of living, crazy woke liberals, Middle East. President Trump's a big man, but he needs the help of a really big Texan, Paul Bondar. Small town upbringing, then big success at business. Big ideas. Smart guy. Send big Paul Bondar to Congress to help Trump. Then both can help us.
I'll make a difference for you.
Big problems need a big solution. Bondar.
I'm Paul Bondar. I approve this message.
I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't do everything possible to win this election. But I do know this, if I stand on every hill, I will never really succeed unless we join together and actually get some of these executive orders codified into law, and that these things can be blessings to our lives for generations to come. We have to do some things different. We've got to be able to balance the budget one day again. We have to be able to stare at our kids and say, listen, I'm not going to leave this situation for you to handle. I'm going to handle it in my generation. You know, we have the largest income gaps and wealth gaps that we've ever had. Many people think, well, it's the tax bracket's the problem. The tax bracket's not the problem. The problem is inflation, because inflation hurts the poor the most. Somebody asked me one time, Ryan, what would you do about our very difficult situation financially? I said, well, I'll do what our business does and what your family does, and likely every great organization does. We'd actually have a budget. We'd balance the budget. And I say this, we'll keep the budget. How about that? Truly innovative. Truly innovative. We haven't done it in 30 years, but we can do it. And I know that. We can be the country that we've all dreamed of being. It is in our grasp, and we can do it, but it's going to take leaders that speak to it, and it's going to take leaders that are willing to listen, to drop our swords and solve problems. And that's what I want to do. We have to lead. I'm going to speak to unifying our country to solve our biggest problems.
I'm asking really businesses, corporations, individuals, churches, and charities, let's start investing in urban America with community centers, do job training, trade schools again. Let's get back to the basics of helping people. Let's let the Republican Party be the bridge to the inner city, show them the way. Though if we believe that a freer economy, less government matters, well, let's be that bridge for them, and that's my message.
50 years from now, we'll be known as the generation, I think, that prospered the most, but sacrificed the least. What have we sacrificed for the next generation? The greatest generation sacrificed their lives for freedom. This is our opportunity to do this for our next generation. How many guys want to contribute to that? And I believe this now more than ever in my lifetime, that it's time that we as a nation, we rid ourselves of everything that darkens that flame, and we brighten this lamp of freedom once again. general election, and District 32 is going to be represented by somebody that you will be proud of. We're going to fight for things that make sense for you and your family. And we're going to have to fight together. I can't do it by myself.
He grew up in a tiny house in a tiny rural town, where Paul Bondar was a big football standout. Paul grew his business big enough to help others across the land. Paul Bondar is a great big conservative Texan with a great big heart. In Congress, he'll help Trump and all of us, like he's helped so many others.
I'm Paul Bondar, and I approve this message.
Texans don't follow, Texans lead. And Jace Yarbrough has never backed down from a fight. A 7th-generation Texan, husband and father of 5, an Air Force officer still serving in the reserves. Rooted in faith, built by family, tested in service, stepping up when it matters most. And today, the fight is here at home. While Democrats try to pull this country apart, Jace slammed the brakes on their radical agenda, suing woke extremists, shutting down their mandates, and blocking the left from reshaping Texas. When Biden pushed woke onto our military, Jace stood firm, refusing to let Washington weaken the values and God-given freedoms that keep America strong. And when Democrats targeted President Trump with election scams, Jace deployed to protect our president. But the threats keep moving closer. A border tested every day. Our daughters told to accept biological boys in their locker rooms. Parents sidelined while bureaucrats muscle in. Because the danger isn't just at the border. It's in the Washington swamp, where insiders think Texas is something to manage, not respect. Jace Yarbrough knows better.
I'm Jace Yarbrough. I've spent my life serving this country, and now I'm ready to serve Texas in Congress. I'll stand with President Trump to keep our border secure, put America first, and protect our conservative values, ones rooted in faith, freedom, and self-reliance. That's why I'm running, and that's the fight I'm ready to lead.
Jace Yarbrough for Congress.
DC's problems are big. Cost of living, crazy woke liberals, Middle East. President Trump's a big man, but he needs the help of a really big Texan, Paul Bondar. Small town upbringing, then big success at business. Big ideas. Smart guy. Send big Paul Bondar to Congress to help Trump, then both can help us.
I'll make a difference for you.
Big problems need a big solution. Bondar.
I'm Paul Bondar. I approve this message.
I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't do everything possible to win this election. But I do know this, if I stand on every hill, I will never really succeed unless we join together and actually get some of these executive orders codified in the law, and that these things can be blessings to our lives for generations to come. We have to do some things different. We've got to be able to balance the budget one day again. We have to be able to stare at our kids and say, listen, I'm not going to leave this situation for you to handle. I'm going to handle it in my generation.
You know, we have the largest income gaps and wealth gaps that we've ever had. Many people think, well, it's the tax bracket's the problem. The tax bracket's not the problem. The problem is inflation, because inflation hurts the poor the most.
Somebody asked me one time, Ryan, what would you do about our very difficult situation financially? I said, well, I'll do what our business does and what your family does, and likely every great organization does. We'd actually have a budget. We'd balance the budget. And I said this, we'll keep the budget. How about that? Truly innovative. Truly innovative. We haven't done it in 30 years, but we can do it. And I know that. We can be the country that we've all dreamed of being. It is in our grasp, and we can do it, but it's going to take leaders that speak to it, and it's going to take leaders that are willing to listen, to drop our swords and solve problems. And that's what I want to do. We have to lead. I'm going to speak to unifying our country to solve our biggest problems.
I'm asking really businesses, corporations, individuals, churches, and charities, let's start investing in urban America with community.
Texans don't follow, Texans lead. And Jace Yarbrough has never backed down from a fight. A seventh-generation Texan, husband and father of 5, an Air Force officer still serving in the reserves. Rooted in faith, built by family, tested in service, stepping up when it matters most. And today, the fight is here at home. While Democrats try to pull this country apart, Jace slammed the brakes on their radical agenda, suing woke extremists, shutting down their mandates, and blocking the left from reshaping Texas. When Biden pushed woke onto our military, Jace stood firm, refusing to let Washington weaken the values and God-given freedoms that keep America strong. And when Democrats targeted President Trump with election scams, Jace deployed to protect our president. But the threats keep moving closer. A border tested every day. Our daughters told to accept biological boys in their locker rooms. Parents sidelined while bureaucrats muscle in. Because the danger isn't just at the border. It's in the Washington swamp, where insiders think Texas is something to manage, not respect. Jace Yarbrough knows better.
I'm Jace Yarbrough. I've spent my life serving this country, and now I'm ready to serve Texas in Congress. I'll stand with President Trump to keep our border secure, put America first, and protect our conservative values, ones rooted in faith, freedom, and self-reliance. That's why I'm running, and that's the fight I'm ready to lead.
Jace Yarbrough for Congress.
DC's problems are big. Cost of living, crazy woke liberals, Middle East. President Trump's a big man, but he needs the help of a really big Texan, Paul Bondar. Small town upbringing, then big success at business. Big ideas. Smart guy. Send big Paul Bondar to Congress to help Trump. Then both can help us.
I'll make a difference for you.
Big problems need a big solution. Bondar.
I'm Paul Bondar. I approve this message.
I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't do everything possible to win this election. But I do know this, if I stand on every hill, I will never really succeed unless we join together and actually get some of these executive orders codified into law, and that these things can be blessings to our lives for generations to come. We have to do some things different. We've got to be able to balance the budget one day again. We have to be able to stare at our kids and say, listen, I'm not going to leave this situation for you to handle. I'm going to handle it in my generation.
You know, we have the largest income gaps and wealth gaps that we've ever had. Many people think, well, it's the tax bracket's the problem. The tax bracket's not the problem. The problem is inflation, because inflation hurts the poor the most.
Somebody asked me one time, Ryan, what would you do about our very difficult situation financially? I said, well, I'll do what our business does and what your family does, and likely every great organization does. We'd actually have a budget. We'd balance the budget. And I said this, we'll keep the budget. How about that? Truly innovative. Truly innovative. We haven't done it in 30 years, but we can do it. And I know that. We can be the country that we've all dreamed of being. It is in our grasp, and we can do it, but it's going to take leaders that speak to it, and it's going to take leaders that are willing to listen, to drop our swords and solve problems. And that's what I want to do. We have to lead. I'm going to speak to unifying our country to solve our biggest problems.
I'm asking really businesses, corporations, individuals, churches, and charities, let's start investing in urban America with community centers, do job training, trade schools again. Let's get back to the basics of helping people. Let's let the Republican Party be the bridge to the inner city, show them the way. If we believe that a freer economy, less government matters, well, let's be that bridge for them, and that's my message.
50 years from now, we'll be known as the generation, I think, that prospered the most, but sacrificed the least. What have we sacrificed for the next generation? The greatest generation sacrificed their lives for freedom. This is our opportunity to do this for our next generation. How many guys want to contribute to that? And I believe this now more than ever in my lifetime, that it's time that we as a nation, we rid ourselves of everything that darkens that flame, and we brighten this lamp of freedom once again. General election in District 32 is going to be represented by somebody that you will be proud of. We're going to fight for things that make sense for you and your family, but we're going to have to fight together. I can't do it by myself.
He grew up in a tiny house in a tiny rural town, where Paul Bondar was a big football standout. Paul grew his business big enough to help others across the land. Paul Bondar is a great big conservative Texan with a great big heart. In Congress, he'll help Trump and all of us, like he's helped so many others.
I'm Paul Bondar, and I approve this message.
Texans don't follow, Texans lead. And Jace Yarbrough has never backed down from a fight. A seventh-generation Texan, husband and father of 5, an Air Force officer still serving in the reserves. Rooted in faith, built by family, tested in service, stepping up when it matters most. And today, the fight is here at home. While Democrats try to pull this country apart, Jace slammed the brakes on their radical agenda, suing woke extremists, shutting down their mandates, and blocking the left from reshaping Texas. When Biden pushed woke onto our military, Jace stood firm, refusing to let Washington weaken the values and God-given freedoms that keep America strong. And when Democrats targeted President Trump with election scams, Jace deployed to protect our president. But the threats keep moving closer. A border tested every day. Our daughters told to accept biological boys in their locker rooms. Parents sidelined while bureaucrats muscle in. Because the danger isn't just at the border. It's in the Washington swamp, where insiders think Texas is something to manage, not respect. Jace Yarbrough knows better.
I'm Jace Yarbrough. I've spent my life serving this country, and now I'm ready to serve Texas in Congress. I'll stand with President Trump to keep our border secure, put America first, and protect our conservative values, ones rooted in faith, freedom, and self-reliance. That's why I'm running, and that's the fight I'm ready to lead.
Jace Yarbrough for Congress.
DC's problems are big. Cost of living, crazy woke liberals, Middle East. President Trump's a big man, but he needs the help of a really big Texan, Paul Bondar. Small town upbringing, then big success at business. Big ideas. Smart guy. Send big Paul Bondar to Congress to help Trump. Then both can help us.
I'll make a difference for you.
Big problems need a big solution. Bondar.
I'm Paul Bondar. I approve this message.
I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't do everything possible to win this election. But I do know this, if I stand on every hill, I will never really succeed unless we join together and actually get some of these executive orders codified in the law, and that these things can be blessings to our lives for generations to come. We have to do some things different. We've got to be able to balance the budget one day again. We have to be able to stare at our kids and say, listen, I'm not going to leave this situation for you to handle. I'm going to handle it in my generation.
You know, we have the largest income gaps and wealth gaps that we've ever had. Many people think, well, it's the tax bracket's the problem. The tax bracket's not the problem. The problem is inflation, because inflation hurts the poor the most.
Somebody asked me one time, Ryan, what would you do about our very difficult situation financially? I said, well, I'll do what our business does and what your family does, and likely every great organization does. We'd actually have a budget. We'd balance the budget. And I said this, we'll keep the budget. How about that? Truly innovative. Truly innovative. We haven't done it in 30 years, but we can do it. And I know that. We can be the country that we've all dreamed of being. It is in our grasp, and we can do it, but it's going to take leaders that speak to it, and it's going to take leaders that are willing to listen, to drop our swords and solve problems. And that's what I want to do. We have to lead. I'm going to speak to unifying our country to solve our biggest problems.
I'm asking really businesses, corporations, individuals, churches, and charities, let's start investing in urban America with community centers, do job training, trade schools again. Let's get back to the basics of helping people. Let's let the Republican Party be the bridge to the inner city, show them the way. If we believe that a freer economy, less government matters, well, let's be that bridge for them, and that's my message.
50 years from now, we'll be known as the generation, I think, that prospered the most, but sacrificed the least. What have we sacrificed for the next generation? The greatest generation sacrificed their lives for freedom. This is our opportunity to do this for our next generation. How many guys want to contribute to that? And I believe this now more than ever in my lifetime, that it's time that we as a nation, we rid ourselves of everything that darkens that flame, and we brighten this lamp of freedom once again. general election in District 32 is going to be represented by somebody that you will be proud of. We're going to fight for things that make sense for you and your family. But we're going to have to fight together. I can't do it by myself.
He grew up in a tiny house in a tiny rural town where Paul Bondar was a big football standout. Paul grew his business big enough to help others across the land. Paul Bondar is a great big conservative Texan with a great big heart. In Congress, he'll help Trump and all of us, like he's helped so many others.
I'm Paul Bondar, and I approve this message.
Texans don't follow, Texans lead. And Jace Yarbrough has never backed down from a fight. A 7th-generation Texan, husband and father of 5, an Air Force officer still serving in the reserves. Rooted in faith, built by family, tested in service, stepping up when it matters most. And today, the fight is here at home. While Democrats try to pull this country apart, Jace slammed the brakes on their radical agenda, suing woke extremists, shutting down their mandates, and blocking the left from reshaping Texas. When Biden pushed woke onto our military, Jace stood firm, refusing to let Washington weaken the values and God-given freedoms that keep America strong. And when Democrats targeted President Trump with election scams, Jace deployed to protect our president. But the threats keep moving closer. A border tested every day. Our daughters told to accept biological boys in their locker rooms. Parents sidelined while bureaucrats muscle in. Because the danger isn't just at the border. It's in the Washington swamp, where insiders think Texas is something to manage, not respect. Jace Yarbrough knows better.
I'm Jace Yarbrough. I've spent my life serving this country, and now I'm ready to serve Texas in Congress. I'll stand with President Trump to keep our border secure, put America first, and protect our conservative values. Ones rooted in faith, freedom, and self-reliance. That's why I'm running, and that's the fight I'm ready to lead.
Jace Yarbrough for Congress.
DC's problems are big. Cost of living, crazy woke liberals, Middle East. President Trump's a big man, but he needs the help of a really big Texan, Paul Bondar. Small town upbringing, then big success at business. Big ideas. Smart guy. Send big Paul Bondar to Congress to help Trump. Then both can help us.
I'll make a difference for you.
Big problems need a big solution. Bondar.
I'm Paul Bondar. I approve this message.
I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't do everything possible to win this election. But I do know this, if I stand on every hill, I will never really succeed unless we join together and actually get some of these executive orders codified in the law, and that these things can be blessings to our lives for generations to come. We have to do some things different.
And we have national distribution with Yahoo News, 500,000 subscribers now. We send 250,000 e-newsletters on a daily basis, every single day, 365 days a year. Our growth has just been incredible, and that's because there was just a tremendous appetite for truth in media. I tell people all the time, we get labeled, by the far left outlets as, being a conservative political newspaper, and we're not. We're not trying to be the DFW Breitbart or Red State. We're just trying to be the rational, truth-based, center-right alternative to the Morning News and Star Telegram. So if you're familiar with this, please check it out. We are free to subscribe. Subscribing just means you give us your and with that email address, you'll get the daily newsletter. We have a free app as well, Dallas Express app, DX app, that's in both the Apple and Google Play stores, also free. And, for those of you that have businesses or are looking to advertise, come talk to us. We've had just tremendous success, particularly in the last 6 months, with our advertising clients. And because our demographic is affluent, educated, all pretty much DFW based, although as I mentioned, we do have national brand recognition. We found that even like high value service type companies, financial services companies, law firms, folks like that have had just a lot of success with our outlet. In fact, I have one gentleman in the energy business be one of our sponsors here tonight, Basin Energy, and he says that we deliver 2x the lead volume to their business as any other source. I have another financial services customer who just told me a couple of days ago that he's acquired 3 multi-million-dollar accounts in the last 2 months from direct advertising with us. So we'll make sure that you guys are aware of that. We're also a 501c3. So we take donations. Anything that you give us is tax deductible, including your ticket here today. So thank you all so much. Quickly with our sponsors, Reedy Financial Services. Again, Basin Energy. Thank all those guys. There's a few more, but I really appreciate them. None of them are here today, I see. They actually don't live in the district, but we really appreciate their support. In terms of the format today, we're going to have a polite, respectful, friendly, civil conversation. The way it's going to work is each candidate is going to be allowed a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing. We're going to start with questions that I've worked out with a number of folks in the room here, as well as some other elected officials, including some folks in Congress today, that they think are important. We're going to give every candidate 90 seconds to answer those questions. If a candidate mentions another candidate by name, we're going to allow them a 30-second rebuttal. And gentlemen, Bryce here will give you a 15-second warning on any of those. And then at some point, we may switch over to a minute just to ensure that we get some key questions. And we're not doing audience Q&A today. It just takes too long typically. We don't need a lot, but I'm sure these gentlemen will stick around and answer any questions that you have when we're done here. So with that, let's get started. And who do we got first? I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Abteen. Go ahead.
Sure. Is this the 2 minutes?
Yep.
My name is Abteen Vaziri. For those that don't know me, I moved here 30 years ago from California. I joke around that I've been a refugee twice in my life, once from Iran and once from the People's Republic of California. I am a Christian, a Texan, born in Iran, raised in Texas. My father was an Air Force officer in the Iranian Imperial Air Force, and he did all his training here in Texas. Unfortunately, he moved back to Iran, and I was born in 1978, and my father was court-martialed, given a death sentence. So we had to escape. We ended up escaping in 1989 to Germany. 2 days after we landed in Germany, the Berlin Wall came down. So that was fun. Moved to California in 1991 and to Texas in in 1995. I attended Plano Senior High School. I went to Cullen College, got an Associate of Science in Computer Science. I got a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from UTD. I got a Master's in Business Administration, MBA from SMU. Go Ponies. And then I ended up finishing my educational career initially at UNT, College of Law here in Dallas, and then ended up finishing at Fordham in New York. I've been very fortunate and I've traveled to many countries around the world. I've been to 42 countries, mostly for business. I've been to People's Republic of China, unfortunately, 30 times in 20 different cities. I've been all around the world, and I think one of the biggest threats that we have here, especially in Texas, and we keep running away from them, they keep following us, and it's the threat of radical Islam. And that's what's really motivated me to run for Congress. And I want to make sure that we don't allow any more mosque or radical Islam or Sharia law to grow in Texas, not an inch over my dead body.
Thank you. Thanks for staying on time.
I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, guys, we will keep a tight clock, just as a heads up.
No for on time.
Monty, go ahead, please.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monty Montanez. I'm a proud Texan. I'm a combat veteran, a disabled one at that. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an international business executive. I've led multinational teams all over the world. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. My campaign is rooted in faith, in family, and community. Without unity, we cannot have community. What makes me different than everyone on stage is that each candidate has ran for office before, and each candidate has lost. Again, I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. I've been in this fight since the beginning, when this district was blue. In June, there were whispers that this district might change. In August, Ryan Binkley joined the fight. In September, every candidate between September and December joined the race. I've been in this fight when it was hard. I'll fight for you now, and I'll fight for you in Washington, D.C. I'd like for you to learn more about me and my campaign at montyforcongress.com. That's Monty, F-O-R, Congress.com. Thank you.
It's time for a new day in Congress. I'm Darrell Day, running for CD32, and Monty's got it a little bit wrong in that I won 2 years ago the GOP nomination, and I also, thank you, and I also won a spot on the Arlington City Council, winning that by 40 points. So yes, I've won races. I'm in a nutshell, I'm a Christian. I accepted Christ at the age of 28. Thank you. I'm a patriot. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a husband. Been married for 23 years to my soulmate. Father, grandfather, and business owner. I've had a business in CD32 for 20 years. I have deep roots in CD32. I've lived in the district for CD32. Some of the candidates here don't even live in the district. I have very, very, very deep roots. And during the time that I've been in the district, I have been pushing for other Republican candidates as well. Not just when I'm running, but I've helped municipal candidates, I've donated to candidates, I've coached candidates. So helping other Republicans getting elected, being involved in the Dallas GOP. I've been very involved in the Dallas GOP for 20 years, and that's very, very important to me because the Democrats have lost their mind. We've seen in Minneapolis what happens when Democrats are in charge. Just insanity. Absolute insanity. So we cannot let Democrats get anywhere close to any levers of power, and we've got to make sure that we bring back CD32 for the GOP. Let's do this.
Hey everybody, my name's Jace Yarbrough. I'm a 7th-generation Texan, follower of Jesus Christ. I grew up in a little bitty town outside Abilene, Texas, population 714. Went to college down at the University of Texas at Austin, pulled up in my long bed extended cab Chevy, and got a parking ticket in about 24 minutes. That was a great growing experience for me, but I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering and then commissioned as an officer in the United States Air Force. Served on active duty for a time, separated after my wife and I had our first. We wanted to be back home so our kids could be near their grandparents. I still serve today as a reservist, so I'm currently stationed at Headquarters Space Systems Command over at Cape Canaveral, Florida. I refused the COVID-19 vaccine when I got the written order to go get it as a reservist. I'm very proud of that. That was the right call. Couple things to know about me. I am a constitutional attorney who goes after the left. So we on the right have played defense for a long time. Got nothing against playing defense. But if we want to win, we have to go on offense. So right now, my firm and I are suing the city and county of San Francisco, the city of San Antonio, green energy companies in West Texas that are abusing Chapter 313, globalist advertisers that are throttling ad revenue for X and Rumble, and a slew of other great cases, taking the fight to the left. I'm running in this race because the Republican Party spent a lot of capital to get 5 new Republican seats here in Texas. Why? Because President Trump needs reinforcements in Congress. The America First agenda needs fighters in each one of these 5 seats. We got into this race to be that fighter. I'm proud to be endorsed in this race by Governor Greg Abbott, Congressman Keith Self, the House Freedom Caucus, Congressman Lance Gooden, a slew of state representatives, members of our SREC, every grassroots organization basically across the state of Texas to include Grassroots America, We the People, Texas Right to Life, the Texas Homeschool Coalition. I'm a homeschooling father of 5 that started a classical Christian academy. I'd encourage each one of you to pick up one of my push cards. There's one issue in this race that matters more than any other, and my push card proves that I am the superior candidate on that issue, which is, who's got the prettiest family?
Thank you, Jace.
Thank y'all very much.
I challenge that.
I'm Paul Bondar. And my gosh, that's impressive. It's a good thing we have an election, not an appointment process. But, ladies and gentlemen, let's get down the facts. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and this election isn't about me. This election is about you. And if you're like me, and that's the reason I ran, you're sick and tired of getting the short end of the stick and feeling like you really don't have true representation in government. COVID-19 showed me we had a very thin line between freedom and tyranny. And when my 5-year-old son said, "Daddy, I can't breathe," because he had to wear a mask, or friends that I had for my entire life said I had to get the vaccine or I was going to lose my job or I couldn't be a coach, I said, this is not America. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got to fight for this country, but more specifically, as your next congressman, I will fight for this district. You know, I hear a lot of buzzwords like Trump and conservative and things that every one of us will all say. But specifically, let's look at the roads here. Route 66 and some of the different bridges and highways and specific things. Let's not have to have vatries where we're having to raise bonds and insult seniors by paying more money to schools because we can't fund our schools right now with our own money. You know, if I take the Dallas Cowboys and every franchise in the NFL and I add them up and I take their television contracts, franchise values, everything, guess what? It takes over 2.5 times more. And they've been around for 100 years. It takes 2.5 times more that value to equal what we sent to Ukraine. As your next congressman, I'm going to advocate for our district. I live in the district. It's about taking care of Americans, taking care of the people here. This is not a club that I'm applying for. I'm applying to take care of you. God bless you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Binkley. It's great to be with you all tonight. Our nation is really, and has been for several years, I really believe this, at a crossroads, almost an inflection point. You can see it battle out from Minnesota to our daily lives, from the assassination attempts on President Trump to Charlie Kirk's killing, that we're trying to find out who are we going to be as a nation. Are we going to be a nation that has American sovereignty, that believes in individual liberty, that believes in our freedoms, that believes in we're a republic? Are we going to bend the knee to globalism and the world effort to make sure that we do not stand strong as a nation? And I am in this race because I also am a little bit different. We're all Republicans, we're all MAGA, but at the end of the day, I'm a CEO of a current company that has about 400 employees across the nation. We do business growth and merger and acquisitions. I'm also a pastor. My wife is here, Ellie. We've been doing ministry side by side for 30 years. We started a small church 12 years ago last week, and it's grown to be a church right there in Richardson along with our business. My kids go to school in the district. We've been a part of this district for most of our lives.
Our nation is fighting a battle of economic depravity. We've become addicted to debt. We're now about to pass off $40 trillion in debt to the next generation. So the reason I'm in this race is for your kids and mine. We're at a struggle. We're at a struggle culturally. We're at a struggle financially. As a pastor, I want to enact laws that really protect your children, that protect life, that protect our Judeo-Christian values that we all share. I believe this, we need to have national laws that protect protect kids from having ungodly procedures on doctors, from harming their lives permanently with really just chemical castration. We need to stop this. We need to have a balanced budget again. The Bible says the borrower is a slave to the lender. And it's time that we have leadership that can bring true skills, what President Trump did to the White House as a CEO, bring to the people's house. And that's what I want to do. I can bring that type of revival to our country, and I'd ask for your vote. I'm Ryan Binkley. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So Ryan, we're coming back your way. Okay. So you get to go back to back here. Here's the first question for the night. It's a simple one, but it's an important one. What do you feel is the single biggest issue facing America today, and what would a policy solution be?
Wow, we've got two big issues.
And as a reminder, 90 seconds.
Okay, I think we've got two big issues today. One's just the nature of the American dream for many of us, the affordability crisis that we're all having, the other is obviously what we're facing with border security and deportations. Everybody is facing affordability because it impacts all of us and all of our kids. The fact is, my children that are here today, they don't have the same opportunity I had 35 years ago. The cost of an apartment is about twice that of the average income, same with housing. People are waiting now till they're 40 years old to buy their first home. The American dream is at stake. We're seeing young people listen to the message of Mandami. I mean, they're hearing this message because the American dream is almost hard to get. I tell people we have 50% of young people living with their parents until they're age 25. It's not because they love us, but it's because they don't have options. And so we have to continue to work with growth with our country, with President Trump. I want to start small business growth. They are the heartbeat of the American economy. We need to keep real wages up again, and we can do that through growing our economy. And I think this, by getting deregulation out of our economy, we have a anchor around our economy called the healthcare system. I want to totally reinvent that with a true marketplace-driven system. And once we do that, to where you can see your doctor, know your doctor, have a health savings account, have price visibility, we can change our country again. Obviously, we need to secure the border, deport illegals, and protect American jobs. And once we do these, the economy will be thriving again.
Thank you. Same question, Paul.
We just saw the greatest heist of the 21st century. COVID-19, everybody in economy, and anybody with an economics degree, I have one, they know the definition of inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. And let's just do a little history trip. Let's go back 5, 6, 7 years. We shut everything down. We put PPP money like crazy. We sent out all these different amounts of billions of dollars of funds when everything was shut down. And then we turned around, and I'm going to stay consistent. We just pumped almost $300 billion into Ukraine a couple years later. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the most sloppiest financial discipline on the face of this earth. And this is, I would argue, these people are not that stupid to have these kinds of policies. What it was we stole a third of Americans' wealth. That's a nice little financial trick that was done on all of us. Now it's great that we're going to want to raise wages and things like that. That's wonderful. What about senior citizens who have saved their entire lives and now all of a sudden you're not working anymore? Do you want to hear about wages going up? I think what you want is you want to have value for the dollars that you've invested in the bank for 40, 50 years in your 401ks. What we got to have is we got to have people that are business leaders that are making good decisions for you. And stop getting sold out by people who buckle because they want to go along with a new scam or sham. Thank you.
The most important issue facing us today as a nation is, what does it mean to be an American? It's immigration and visa reform. Who are we as a nation? Are we just an economic zone? No. We're a people, and that has implications. President Trump ran the first time on the issue of immigration. That's what set him apart initially, and he was absolutely right to do so. He has moved the conversation today. I fully and completely back his effort to reorient American immigration policy to one that prioritizes Americans for national cohesion. We all feel concerned, uncomfortable. Things feel off because we're coming apart as a nation. Why? Because we no longer share common values with people that we see in the grocery store or at our public schools, people that are at the local mall. Because we're not from the same place, we don't have the same formation. That's the key issue facing us as a people. And I'll say this also. One thing about the President's America First agenda, it's not just about policy. It's also about disposition. It's about going on offense. Napoleon said, the logical end of a defensive strategy is defeat. We as Republicans have been in the business of defeat for decades because all we want to do is play defense. Trump came in and said, no, you have to go on offense on all fronts. You have to have a vision. You're not just saying no, you're saying yes. This is the direction we're going to go. The work that I've done in my law firm, standing up to the COVID-19 vaccine, founding a classical Christian academy, it's low cost in its third year with 50 students. All these things are about taking ground, going on offense. That's the thing that makes Trump different. That's the thing that makes me different. That's what I want to fight for in Congress, and I will fight for when I'm your next congressman from Texas 32. Thanks.
The long-term issue is the $38 trillion budget deficit, but the most pressing thing is immigration. And we've seen the problem of having the highest level of immigration that we've ever had in our nation's history. We've seen the problem in New York where Mamdani, a communist, is elected because all of the new residents in New York voted for him. It wasn't the longtime New Yorkers voting for Mamdani, it was the newcomers. And just imagine that going on city by city across the country. You realize, yes, we've got to make sure we keep the border shut down. Yes, we've got to stand behind our ICE agents and get rid of illegals, even the non-violent illegals. And a majority of the American people want all illegals deported, not just, and yes, of course, we want to get the violent ones out first. But we've already seen what's happened when we get the violent illegals out of the country. Do you all know that the violent crime rate had a 20% drop last year? It's dropped to the lowest level since 1900. And what is the only thing that you could explain? And that would be thousands of violent illegals being shipped out of our country. Thank you, President Trump. We've got to continue that effort.
Two topics, national identity, I agree with Jace, and the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap. I'll start with national identity because they've talked about it a little bit. We need to get the Pledge of Allegiance back in our schools from K through 12. We need to pledge allegiance to this country every single day, K through 12. What happens when we don't do that? If you're not from this country, you bring your nation with you. If you're here, you create a nation within a nation. We see what's happening in Minnesota right now. I've seen counterinsurgency overseas. It's organized. We need to get to the root of that. And we need to understand those that are responsible and bring them to justice. When we talk about Greenland and why it's so important between Greenland, Iceland, and UK, we have, apart from it being a transatlantic thoroughway, there are 95% of all data ran through the undersea cables in that gap. If we don't secure that area, what happens if one of those cables are cut? Economic and global catastrophe. We cannot allow that to happen, and that is why Greenland and that gap is so important for us. There are domestic issues we need to manage, but we need to keep our eye on the ball and ensure that we follow not only the Monroe Doctrine, but the Donroe Doctrine. Thank you.
I think some of the most important things in our culture is safety and security here at home and economy and jobs. And safety and security at home, I'm going to steal a line from Colonel Allen West. There's a conscious effort by the joint between the red and the green, and that's Marxism and Islamism here in the United States. And they're gaining a foothold. There are about 40,000 keyboard warriors, I call them, that live with their parents, called the Democratic Socialists of America. They all live in their mother's basement, and they go to these events, and they're paid, and they're very sophisticated. These people have gotten 70% of the city council in New York elected. They got Mamdani elected, and they're a threat. And most of us don't even know these people exist. There's also an educational problem. I think a lot of the young just don't understand what socialism means. Most of these people that are Democratic Socialists of America don't understand the Democratic Socialist Party of Germany is called the Nazi Party. That's where it started. But more importantly, jobs. We got to bring jobs here. We've been ripped off by our politicians. Right here in Richardson, Texas, our politicians told us that we're sending low-tech jobs to China. But they export it 10,000 high-paying jobs at Nortel, put Nortel out of business, and a company named Huawei stole all their intellectual property and basically now earns $120 billion a year. And also they have backdoor switching technology that they sell into every one of our allies in Europe and South America that can spy on our allies.
Abteen, you can stay right here. We're on to our second question. So just like in 2016 when Republicans had both houses of Congress and the presidency a trifecta majority, little seems to be getting done to pass a comprehensive border security immigration reform bill. I certainly don't hear one being actively debated, and the clock is ticking. If in fact, Republicans are able to hold on to both houses and you're elected, what's it take? What's the problem? Why can we not get, particularly since the president was elected on it twice, comprehensive border security immigration reform passed? What's the reason, and how would you influence that?
The reason is that we have too much swamp in Washington. I think everybody knows that, right? I mean, this is the time right now to get legislation passed. We have the president, we have the Supreme Court, we have both houses of Congress, and nothing is getting done. I moved to the United States in 1991 as a political refugee in 1991. In 1990, 37 years ago, a year before I moved here to the US, is the last time we had comprehensive immigration reform. The Democrats, instead of passing immigration reform and allowing people with skills and with foreign direct investment to come here, they just don't want to do anything. And the Republicans also don't want to do anything because it's not the popular thing to do, because they all want to just get reelected. We need people that are not going to go fall in line. We need people that are going to go there and they're going to fight. We need fighters to go out there, and this is the time. We're hoping that to win this midterm to go out there and help President Trump. But this Congress that's there, worthless. They're part of the swamp, and nobody wants to, do any immigration reform because it's the unpopular thing. Because all they're trying to do is keep enriching themselves and trading stocks and doing the things they're not supposed to do and get reelected. Nobody really wants to work. That's why it's important to make sure we don't send professional politicians. We got to send business owners to Washington that are like President Trump, that understand how to balance a budget, that understand how to run a business, to go out there and help President Trump.
Thank you. Good morning.
I agree with him. It's not just a swamp, it's a sewer. A swamp is an ecosystem. So there's some good things and bad things that come from a swamp. A sewer is full of doo-doo, and we need to clean it. And that's Washington, D.C. A lot of folks up here will talk about getting in the fight and how much we need to fight and how they're conservative fighters. I'm the only one that has actually seen a fight. I know what the enemy looks like. I've lived in China. I've lived and worked in Europe. I know what socialism looks like. I know what communism looks like, and I know that that doesn't belong here. We have too many folks in Washington, D.C. that have been there too long. So not only do I believe in U.S. term limits, and not only have I signed on, I also believe that term limits don't just apply to congressmen. They don't just apply to the presidency. They should also be applied to staffers and to bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. We need to get them out. We need to return the power to the people.
I'll show you what it will take. Right here. It's called a backbone. We need a backbone. We've got these gutless pukes in Washington, D.C. that will not stand up for our laws. We've got the laws to get things done. For example, Biden was saying, I can't protect the border. We've got to enact new laws. And President Trump said, no, we don't need new laws. We need a new president. And he was exactly right. We have the laws, and we have to enforce the laws aggressively, actively, no backing down, enforce our laws. And things like sanctuary cities, where a city says, we're not going to follow these federal laws in this city. No, that is absolute garbage. We're going to get rid of sanctuary cities. We're going to enforce our laws. All we need in Washington is people with a backbone. It's pretty simple. Let's do that.
Obviously, I'm not a member of Congress. I can't speak to what goes on inside that body, but I can tell you what I would fight for. I would fight, as I said before, unapologetically for the president's effort to do everything he can to get every illegal alien out of this country. Whether that's ICE enforcement, prosecuting those who have defrauded the American taxpayer, denaturalizing those who are breaking our laws, anything like that. Now, all of us up here will come up and basically say the same thing. I do think it's important to look at scar tissue, right? If somebody stands in front of you and says, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I have a backbone, okay, Well, show me what you've done. The left has been after all of us for a decade now, at least, since COVID, for sure. Every one of us has had to confront each of these problems. What have we done about it? I can tell you that in the Air Force, I got the written order to go get the COVID-19 vaccine. I had never received a written order to go get a vaccine before. We have a whole system, totally paperless, designed to make sure we're up on our vaccinations. I knew what they were doing. They were setting me up for a UCMJ. I knew what was coming, and I refused anyway. And I'll tell you, the first step when I applied for a religious exemption was to have an interview with a chaplain whose job was to test the sincerity of my Christian faith. Now, I was ready for the Gestapo. This guy wasn't going to be on my side. Turns out he actually was. 30 seconds into the conversation becomes very clear. He's a genuine believer in Christ, and he sees that I am too. But he told me, in that interview, I want you to know my superiors have instructed me to trick you into saying things that will make it easier for them to deny your application. The institutions that we conservatives have traditionally relied on, from the military to public schools to corporations, have been taken from us, weaponized against us. We need people who know how to fight against it, who have proven they will stand up when the pressure's on, staring down a UCMJ if it requires that.
Thank you, Jace.
Do what they know is right.
We got to move to the next speaker. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of work to do, right? I think we all know President Trump is so hated because he stands in between the people trying to take our liberty and freedom away. And someday there won't be a President Trump. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do then? Or if we lose the midterms, God help us, who is going to be there to help President Trump so that we don't have another kangaroo court impeachment sham? Ladies and gentlemen, it's not all about me. I've been consistent on that, and I'm going to tell you once again. It's about you. Sending me to be your representative is going to be somebody that's going to fight for you. It's going to fight for President Trump, and we're going to fight for the district. And I don't care where you come from. People asked me the other day, they said, Paul, how are you going to treat Democrats in the district? I said, I'm going to represent everybody in the district, because what we're not going to do is we're not going to divide and have little factions. We suffer with that within the Republican Party, as a matter of fact. What this district needs is leadership. It's about every yacht sailing with a rising tide, as Ronald Reagan said so well. What we need to be able to do is have leadership for you that works for you, not talk about stories about us. That's what's imperative. God bless you.
So the question was really about, why don't we enact a law that permanently creates a border and has border security and immigration policies that work forever? If we go back just a few years ago, we have to remember Joe Biden was letting in, as President of the United States, 4 to 5 million people a year. Over 100,000 people were dying of fentanyl a year, 150,000. We had a friend of ours in our family, daughter took one pill, recreational drug, one pill, not an overdose, from a friend, died immediately as a young teenager. This is a challenge we've had. President Trump came in and solved the problem, but what we have to do is make sure we can never go back again. And this is what has to happen. If we can never have the thought that another Democratic presidential candidate can do what Joe Biden did. So I would say this, finish the work that President Trump started. So what do we need to do? We know this, the money that brought in with the big, beautiful bill has a horizon to it, only about 3 more years for the funding for all the ICE agents. That goes away after 3 years. We have to make sure that's permanent. So we need border security, and I think while we have the House, while we have the President, while we have the Senate, border security from California to Texas. We need towers, technologies, and people permanently into law so it doesn't change and so we never go back. We actually have to make sure that we end catch and release forever. We have to make sure that we end this thing where you remain start where you remain in Mexico instead of coming to our border. When we bring real change, it'll make the difference to our nation so we never go back to where we were. This is the thought I have. Let's put laws into place, not just a couple year horizons of budget, but true laws so it can never be taken from us and we protect our country forever.
All right, you can just stay there. So staying on immigration, but a bit of a different flavor, I'd argue that in North Texas in particular, the H-1B issue is one of the most talked about right now in our community because people are feeling the impacts of it. Communities are fundamentally changing. It's palpable. If you don't believe that, listen to my good friend James Parker's radio show on WBAP every day from 2 to 5 p.m. They spend a lot of time on that particular topic. What's your position on the program?
Just as a general overview, we probably have 20 plus different type of visa worker programs out there with different names on it. H-1B visa, 90% of them are primarily technology jobs with science, technology, engineering, mathematics related to technology companies, AI, Google, whoever, getting students and getting visas in here for workers. We have given as a country, we've probably created 5 million jobs in India over the last 20, 30 years, from basically foreign employment as well as visas. We have to make sure that we do two things. We got to protect American workers. We've got fraud in these visa systems. Greg Abbott just came through and said, hey, we're going to stop government hires in Texas, and I applaud that completely. We've got fraud happening. We're seeing it all over. We need to stop that, and we need to protect American wages. And the way we do that is, I believe, what President Trump has done with tariffs on imports. We can tax, if you're going to hire a foreign employee at any level, we need to make sure there's no fraud there, and we do not, an American worker does never lose a job again to a foreign employee. And this is what we have to do, protect jobs and wages. It's a challenge, and after this, we need to make sure that we are at the front of the line with students learning STEM as much as possible, so we are creating the highest paying jobs. We need to be a leader in that and not a follower.
I'm going to stay consistent with what President Trump has said for a very long time, which I love about him, the honesty of the man. We got to start bringing in, with immigration, the best and the brightest. We need to attract people who are going to make America better and bring dollars into this country and bring businesses into this country and have American made. We cannot continue to allow for folks to come in to undercut and become a burden to society. Economically, we cannot afford to do that, ladies and gentlemen, but also culturally. So I'm going to stay consistent with what President Trump has said and rolled out in this response. But more importantly, what we need to do as a country is we need to really understand that AI is going to change everything. I haven't heard anybody start talking about this and get thoughtful on this, but the world as we know it is rapidly changing. Somebody that's going to represent you has to have a vision to be able to understand that these white-collar jobs that we relied on for so long are going to be replaced by AI. But the shingles aren't going to go on the roofs by themselves, and the water heaters aren't going to get fixed by themselves. It's important that we invest in American workers and tradespeople. And it's important, even though I have several college educations in this, it's important that we don't only define success in college, but we define success in made in America with American heart and soul and American workers. That's where we have to turn. Thank you.
So I disagree that we need to bring the best and brightest here. I think we should raise them up from here and recognize they already exist here. Thank you. So much of the visa system is a fraud. There are degree mills, pedigree mills that exist overseas. Those folks will get those degrees, they'll come here, and they'll compete with advantages given to them by American companies with our college graduates, with our high school graduates. That has to stop. The generation, the voters that understand this, are those that are 35 and below, because they experience it every day, and it's real. And I'm proud in this race of the record that I have, which I offer to you, but I'm also proud of my endorsements because it demonstrates a certain recognition that there are certain issues which are non-negotiable. Preferring the American student, the American family, and the American worker, that's non-negotiable for me, which is why almost every young Republican group in this district has endorsed us and gotten behind us. And I'm very proud of that. Not because it's an appointment, but because it's a recognition that they recognize in me someone who has fought for what they believe, who tells you what I think and why I think it, and will go fight for those things even when the doors are closed in Washington. If that's you, if you agree with me on this issue, then I'd appreciate your vote for Jace Yarbrough. Thank you.
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we have over 50 GOP precinct chairs that have endorsed us, that they live in this district. It's not Washington insiders, it's GOP precinct chairs that live in this district. But getting back to the H-1B program, I had a search firm that for 28 years worked with architects, and we saw over the years that program gradually eroded. 20 years ago, you had to place an ad to try to get a U.S. worker before you could hire a foreign worker. Over the years, we saw that throttled back, and over time, it started to become abused. So President Trump is exactly right. The H-1B program, the abuse of the H-1B program has lowered wages in the U.S. It has been abused, and we have to make sure that we cut back on foreign workers flooding into this country. Now, do we want a couple of the best and the brightest? If there's a Nobel Prize winning biochemist that wants to move here, let's vet the heck out of them and bring them. Other than that, yes, we can train up U.S. workers to take these jobs, and let's do that.
I agree with Jace. We don't need to bring people here. We have the best and brightest here in the United States of America. What we do need to do is continue to invest now and into the future in our trades programs and also in our STEM programs. We don't need other people. We can do it ourselves. AI and consumer confidence will lead growth here in the United States both this year all the way through 2030. AI is driven by data centers, and a lot of capital investment is pouring into the United States and definitely pouring into Texas. And what does that mean for us here in Texas 32? Well, that's going to be a big stress test on our electric grid and our water grid. We need to ensure that someone knows how to have that conversation, negotiate and fight for us for those investment dollars to secure that infrastructure spend here in Texas 32. We've got what we need. Thank you.
So I've lived close to 30 years in this district, and I watched the demographics of this district change. I think, in the early 1900s, when we were manufacturing economy, we needed labor, and we opened our doors and we let everyone in to come help build this country. Today, what we really need is foreign direct investment. In my day job, I've brought north of $200 million to this district specifically, and all over the Dallas-Fort Worth, North Dallas area through the foreign direct investments. Hotel in downtown Dallas named the Statler Hilton Hotel, which was closed for 30 years. For 30 years, it was just boarded up. I figured out how to get that financed, and we brought the money in, and we revitalized, and I actually had my 15-year business school reunion from SMU at that hotel. I think the H-1B program is a complete farce. It's completely been taken advantage of. It was meant to be that the STEM degrees, the science technology degrees that we didn't have, we go and find these skills in other countries. But let me tell you, every single one of those skills that we want, that we're hiring through the H-1B program, we have here locally. The government is not always the answer. Sometimes we just need to educate our folks. If we give, student loans to people that get STEM degrees and we don't give them out to other people, that solves that problem. But let me tell you that the abuse that's been taken on in the H-1B program here is ridiculous. And even what the governor has done, to stop hiring, that doesn't stop the H-1B program. All it does, it says that the state is no longer going to be contributing to the abuse that's been taken on this economy by the state using the H-1B program. But that doesn't stop the H-1B program. The H-1B program is still going on, and there's
I gave you your next question.
Sure.
Thank you. We got one more on immigration. Because it's such an important topic, and put you guys on the spot here a little bit. Do you support what President Trump has suggested in terms of restricting or banning immigration from certain countries? If so, why, and which ones?
This is an interesting question, right? So I was born in Iran, and obviously I care about what's going on with people in Iran, and it's been a very emotional last 2 weeks. But I actually support having a ban on the people from Iran coming here. Because what people here don't understand, if you're getting a student visa and you're coming from Iran, guess what? You're not the majority of the population. You're the less than 5% of the regime's kids and people that are tied to the regime that the regime is funding for you to come here so you can either steal the technology or spy on Americans and then take that back. Most Iranians actually support having a ban on Iranians coming here until we figure out the situation in Iran. There's other countries that are doing the same, that are abusing. And until we figure out our immigration system, until we figure out comprehensive reform, and until we figure out how to keep Americans safe, I support President Trump to ban as many countries until we figure out how to safely bring countries here that are going to help our economy and help our values, our Judeo-Christian values here at home.
I absolutely support President Trump on this topic. I would extend that not only to Iran, but also to include China and any other foreign adversary. President Trump just agreed to allow 800,000 folks, tens of thousands of Chinese to come into the United States to study. I disagree with that. The Chinese come here, we train them, they learn how to innovate, they learn our technologies, and then they go back to China. They steal our secrets, they take advantage of our technology and our innovation. We need to ensure that we keep that here and we allow only Americans and most favored nation allies to come here and learn how to continue to support and promote our Judeo-Christian values. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We have to cut back on the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students that have been stealing our research at U.S. universities all over the country. Also, I've advocated for a 5-year ban on immigration, and not from any particular country, but from all countries, because I spoke earlier about us being at the highest level of immigration we've ever had in our nation's history. We need to bring that down. We need to give people a chance to assimilate. And we also need to make sure that we've got the process in place to correctly vet anybody in the future that we bring in. And I'll tell you, just once, I want to walk into Walmart and find somebody who speaks English. Just once.
I also support a drastic reduction in immigration, repeal of the Hart-Celler Act, which shifted our immigration policy away from a focus on national cohesion and American identity and towards something different. It made us more amorphous as a people. And I think a lot of the problems we see today are because of it. I will say, though, I think this question is probably related to the Islamification of Texas, which is the issue I have heard more about since launching my campaign on January 5th than any other issue. Right? Americans are absolutely skeptical, right to be skeptical of Islam. Our first introduction for most of us was 9/11. Right? And then what happens? Then we see hordes of Islamic immigrants coming and attempting to set up Sharia law here in the United States, which is fundamentally incompatible with American citizenship. Right? Congressman Keith Self co-founded the Sharia Free America Caucus, which has now exploded. A number of members have joined. I'm proud to be endorsed by him. I will absolutely join that caucus and fight hard for the reforms that they are calling for, which include a national ban on Sharia law here in the United States. Lastly, I'll say this. One of the things we're finding out is there are pockets of that culture, that subculture, which are affirmatively taking advantage of the American taxpayer. If you are coming from a country in which your religion says that your job is to take advantage of the infidel, you don't belong here. Why? Because in America, we are a Christian nation. That has given us many gifts. One of them is that we recognize the inherent human dignity of every person regardless of their faith or creed. My duty as a believer is to treat you with dignity and respect, regardless of your beliefs. It is not the case for everyone around the world. Thank you very much.
Great answer. Well done. Well done.
As my granddaddy used to say, we're not going to be beaten from the outside in, but from the inside out. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a cultural war on our hands. We are a nation of immigration, right, of immigrants, and we're proud of that. Statue of Liberty, this nation was built on immigration, but proper immigration, vetted immigration. And we also have to have controlled immigration, because every time we bring in people with different values and different belief systems, there needs to be an assimilation to occur where people years ago would come here and say, I am proud to be an American, and I'm here because I want to work and be great. We have lost that. I believe in upward mobility because of my story. I believe in a meritocracy. I believe that we have an opportunity here to be able to go from very little to great things. This is what we're losing every day. But immigrants used to come here for the same reason, to become great in America. But lately, most immigrants are coming here to live off of Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the existential threat that we have. We have a cultural battle within our nation. And what we need to do is we need to curtail this, and we need to slow down all forms of immigration. As I said earlier, I'm going to stay consistent. It needs to be the right people in a controlled manner. But more importantly, we have to have everybody that wants to come here love America and be American first. God bless you.
Well, I absolutely agree with President Trump. I think about the two bigger movements that are really impacting the culture of our country. We've talked about them already. Communism, Marxism, as well as Sharia law. These two movements are completely incompatible with the DNA of our country. So I would absolutely support stopping immigration from any nation that has these two major influences. We are a Judeo-Christian country. A neat story here, you know, my wife immigrated to this country almost 50 years ago. Her dad is 95, still alive, and lives just down the road from us, just right outside of District 32 by about a quarter mile. But he was an interpreter for General Trudeau in the Korean conflict. And he loved our country. He spoke English as one of his primary languages, and he waited 10 years in line to come to our country. And when he came here, he started businesses with his wife, and they eventually fulfilled the American dream. But he taught his kids a couple things. He taught them to love this country, speak English as its first language, and to give back, never take. We need to have immigrants come into our country from the right cultures that absolutely love our country, embrace its culture, are going to wait in line and do it the right way and speak English as its first language. And I believe that when we do this, we'll have a great culture in our country.
You guys are doing great with the clock, by the way. Thank you so much. We'll shift a little bit to foreign policy. And Ron, back to you. Share your understanding, interpretation of the War Powers Act, and whether this president or any president has the right to pursue military operations like the one President Trump has done in the first year in Venezuela and Iran.
Well, as the commander-in-chief, he has the right to be able to make sure that we protect the sovereignty of the United States of America. The philosophy that President Trump is leading our nation in and is making sure that we all are abiding in and thinking about is that he is staying ahead of the curve, 5 or 10 years ahead of the curve, that there is influences coming to our country that's trying to steal our very freedom. We have to know this, and he's leading by this very philosophy that peace is only going to come one way, and that's through strength. We can no longer be weak across the world. And so his influence of what he's done in Venezuela, his influence and his way he negotiates to make sure that we have, I believe this, the proper mineral rights in Greenland and different places is really about security of our country. So what he's doing, and even right now, the fleet that's heading over to Iran. When you send the USS Abraham Lincoln over there with the fleet, it's not to invite them for a cruise ship. It's to make sure that they know that you better line up with American values and you better know that your end is coming soon. So I believe this. We have to respect trade, but there's only one voice our enemies recognize, and that's strength. And President Trump is leading that way. I support him in this effort, and we need to make sure that we are strong Americans. And when we're strong here, we're going to be strong abroad, and people are going to pay attention.
Hypocrisy. Have you ever heard the word? Hypocrisy. This is the reason why 91% of the people in Congress are not respected and why Americans are losing faith in our government fast. Hypocrisy. Last I checked, let's do a little history lesson. North Korean War, Vietnam War. These were wars that were not officially sanctioned by Congress, and they happened. But yet now, President Trump is getting criticized for these military actions that were so swift and carried out so well. These were not endless wars that President Trump is engaging in, but yet he's taking flack for that when we had endless wars before. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sick and tired of the hypocrisy, and that's why I'm running to be your representative, to defend us from this hypocrisy. Let's take a little trip down January 6th. There were some protesters that President Trump was to blame for. And now all of a sudden, you know, we look back and the vicious death of Ashley Babbitt by the hands of the Capitol Police, it was President Trump's fault. And he had to be barred from becoming president of the United States by so many people. Do we remember this? Now let's just think about last week. A tragedy happened in Minnesota. And this was another protest. But this was a protest that was at the hands of Tim Walz. But guess what it is? It's President Trump's fault again. This is all the same thing with the wars and everything else. It's hypocrisy. And so yes, I stand consistent on this.
The left likes to use technicalities like the War Powers Act to prevent Republican conservative presidents from doing what leftist presidents do all the time. President Trump was absolutely right to bomb Iran, to set that country back in terms of its nuclear arms development. I would actually push back and say the operation in Venezuela wasn't a War Powers Act at all. It was a law enforcement action, right? He'd been indicted in the Southern District of New York. In each of these instances, President Trump is doing what he does best, which is changing the incentive structure for the leaders around the world to say the American people and the American government have certain red lines. And when you cross them, for example, if you allow your state apparatus to be used by international narco-terrorist organizations to both manufacture and pump into the United States hundreds of thousands of tons of poison per year, which Maduro was doing, while protecting yourself with Cuban intelligence, one of our adversaries, well, then you're going to find out. And I don't really care who comes after you. I'm not interested in installing the next leader, but I will make sure that the incentives that leader confronts include red lines for the United States and the American people. I completely support the president in this effort. And I'll say again, his actions in this sphere demonstrate that he's not interested in the technicalities. We are facing a cliff as a people. We are coming apart as a nation. And either we're going to solve it and come back together, or we're going to go over that cliff. And he's fighting, as you've seen him fight, as if everything is on the line. My background, what I've already done, proves that I do the same. And if that's you, then I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
As Jace said, Venezuela was a law enforcement act to pluck somebody who had an indictment against them. So completely on board with that, completely on board with bombing boats bringing fentanyl, bringing heroin and death to our shores. So Democrats complaining about that. I mean, that if President Trump cured cancer tomorrow, you all know they'd complain that he was hurting drug company profits. So any criticism of President Trump from the left is just crap, and you can just ignore it. Now, I will say, I'm not on board with us invading Greenland. Now, I think we need Greenland. I want fair negotiations. I think the first salvo was $700 billion. I want us to buy Greenland, but let's do that instead of invade Greenland.
I absolutely agree with President Trump. In fact, this is not the first time that we've done something like this. In 1998, 1999, we deployed troops under this to first Bosnia and later Kosovo. In fact, I participated in my first combat mission. I was part of Joint Special Operations Task Force 1 and 2. Later, I was activated for something called 9/11, where I went overseas and I fought in the sandbox. Not just myself, many others. We know what the enemy looks like abroad, but we also, someone mentioned that the enemy's coming in. The enemy is already here. So the president not only has the power to do it overseas, he also has it here, and that is called martial law, both qualified and absolute. Not only have I won the humanitarian award abroad, I've also earned it here. The largest tornado in recorded American history was May 3rd, 1999 in Oklahoma City. And President Clinton activated the military under martial law. I participated in that activity because we had folks that decided that they could be lawless, just like in Minneapolis. And guess what? They found out. We restored law. Our republic, we're at a turning point. A great nation generally lasts around 250 years. This year we are 250 years old. If we don't fix it, we lose it. If you agree with me, montyforcongress.com, Monty Montanez, Monty, F-O-R, Congress.com. I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
I think Jace mentioned that most Americans didn't really know about radical Islam until 9/11. Well, let me tell you, I lived it. When I was 1 year old, my father was snatched from us and given a death sentence and on death row by the same Islamists. Because President Carter brilliantly thought that the way to beat the Soviet Union was through Islamism. And his national security advisor, which was the architect of this, Brzezinski, was even worse. Let me tell you, when was the last time Congress has declared war in a country? It hasn't happened in a long time. But President Biden decided to go poke the bear and pump $300 billion into Ukraine and almost got us in a nuclear war with Russia. Was that authorized by Congress? I think what President Trump brilliantly realizes is that our adversary is China. And some of us still have our head under the sand and don't want to accept it. There's 4 different ways that you could be at war with someone: economic war, cyber war, cold war, hot war, and nuclear war. Well, we're already at war with China, cyber war, and economic war. And what President Trump brilliantly realizes is that the same lessons that we learned from World War II. The Nazis had better weapons than us, they had better tanks, they had better planes, they ran out of oil. And what President Trump realizes, to have national security, we have to forget all the previous rules, and we have to secure not just enough energy for us, but make sure that we cut off China from energy supply. What he brilliantly did in Venezuela, and what he's doing brilliantly with Iran, is to make sure we secure those energy resources, because if we don't, and by the way, if China gets Canada and Greenland, that also adds problems.
Thank you, Abteen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're up next. You can stay there. So, gentlemen, national debt approaching staggering $40 trillion. We haven't had a balanced budget since 2001, or a budget surplus when President Clinton enjoyed the peace dividend. Every Republican in Congress claims to support a balanced budget amendment, so you can say yes or no to that. But my question is, just like on border security and immigration reform, why can't they get it done with trifecta majority? And what is preventing us from cutting spending in a very real way at this point? And what would you do differently than what folks in Congress today are doing?
Sorry. So the national debt is a problem. It's a huge problem, and nobody wants to address it. And every president has been guilty. You know, it's supposed to be that you're supposed to run a deficit when you're at war, and that's pretty much it. But now everybody's abusing that. I just think that, you know, President Trump is moving in the right direction as someone that ran businesses and someone that knows how to balance a budget, but it takes time. One thing, I think one brilliant idea that actually Kyle Bass had is that we're basically the stock market of the world. And every country in the world trades in our stock market, and they don't pay taxes on our gains. We're funding the capital markets of the rest of the world. That is one way I think Congress should put some pressure and get some revenues from all these countries that are invested in our stock market, and they're not paying their fair share, and they're using our markets. They're, you know, even China. China's using our markets and raising money for their companies that some of them are dual use, and they're using that same money that we're raising here from our people for their military. The American taxpayer has been carrying the rest of the world on its back. We got to stop getting the middle class in America to have to subsidize the rest of the world. Whether it's drugs, all the pharmaceuticals around the world, all the intellectual property, and all the security of the world is carried on the backs of our middle class. And our middle class is just tired of that. We got to balance the budget, we got to reduce the debt, and we got to take down this burden on our middle class. And that's the only way we're going to have a good economy, and that's the only way we're going to have national security, is fixing the budget and fixing the burden on the middle class.
Thank you,
Talk about two things. One is we need to focus not just on a balanced budget, but on zero-based budgeting. We need to ensure that anyone that's going to ask for money, they need to come before Congress and demonstrate to us exactly how they're going to use it. If it doesn't make sense, you don't get the money. The second thing I'll talk about is the party needs to come together. We've had 2 consecutive bills where this last one, 192 Republicans, if I get that right, 191, 192, that went against the administration, and they agreed on $5 billion of spending. $5 billion for refugees. Do you imagine what we can do with that? Before that, 81 Republicans rebelled against the administration for over $312 million. We need to stop that. We need cohesion. We need to come together, and we need to make sure that no longer does the middle class bear the burden, and no longer does the United States bear the burden of the rest of the world. Thank you.
Well, I've been beating the drum for 3 years for zero-based budgeting, so I'm delighted to hear other people starting to talk about it. So instead of one big, beautiful bill, I want to say 180 tiny, beautiful bills. What are the advantages there? Number one, it's harder to find or harder to hide pork in a small bill like that instead of a big bill, right? Number two, the media can't hold a gun to our head and say, oh, we're going to shut down the government if you don't pass this monstrosity. Number three, it forces every single government agency to go before Congress and justify their existence. And number four, it forces them to come before Congress to do its damn job and justify every single dollar that's allocated benefits the American people. So yes, zero-based budgeting, I think we can bring that deficit down in a hurry if we did that. And now, will it make the budget process very cumbersome and very long? Absolutely will. And we just have to, one at a time, get 434 more people that will go along with what I think will bring down our deficit quickly.
So everybody will stand up here and say, I'm for zero-based budgeting, you know, we need to cut spending and these sorts of things. All that stuff is true, and I think all of us are being truthful when we say that. The problem is it's a massive collective action problem, and that a single congressman has almost no power to change the process itself. Right? So looking strategically at what options we have on the table, I think the list of cuts that DOJ laid out are a great place to start at least. Why? Because they're limited and targeted, because they're great PR for Republicans, right? I mean, how much hay have we already made over stopping the sale of, you know, condoms to orphaned elephants in Cambodia, right? Right. So this is a place to start. And I'll go back again to this issue of fraud in so much of our immigration system, the burden that's put on us because there are people here against our laws. Fraud has been perpetrated on the American taxpayer, and even when we find it, right, even when the left is able to funnel money to its leftist NGOs, right, the Supreme Court comes in and tells the Trump administration, for example, no, actually, you have to spend, this is 2 weeks ago, you have to spend $200 million on, you know, random museums in small towns and counties throughout the world, right? It's a huge problem, I'll say that. I can't speak, as being not a member of Congress, why these things haven't happened yet, but I think the place to start is with the treasure trove of cuts that Elon Musk pointed out to us through DOJ. I think that's actually achievable, and that's something I would fight for.
I have to interject here and say that I actually know the individual that stopped some of that condom nonsense, and you're not too far off. As crazy as that example sounded.
For the record, I don't work for L1B, and I did make that up.
Can't or won't? This is the question. Can't or won't? Insurance companies, when I was a businessman, my entire life said, well, we can't get the renewals until the last day because we're so busy. I said, great, I'll send you the information 90 days in advance so you can. Why aren't we working in advance on our budget? As soon as we pass the budget, we're working on logistics or we're looking on analytics to start passing the next one. Why are we jumbling everything together and not having line item clarity and transparency? I think Nancy Pelosi said, pass it and then read it. What the heck kind of a horse crap answer is that? That's our government. Pass it and then read it. There's two parts of the budget. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's one called mandatory spending and discretionary spending. Well, people say, you can't touch mandatory spending. Sure, that's true. I don't want to cut Social Security. I don't want to cut Medicaid and Medicare and those programs. But how many of you give dollars to a charity and say, how good do you feel when 50% of that dollar or 80% of that dollar goes to admin fees? You're probably not too happy. And this is how we fix what's going on in Washington. It comes by looking at how the TPAs that are handling the mandatory expenses are being handled. And then secondarily through discretionary spending, so we don't have art program in Ethiopia and basket weaving in Minnesota. This is how we fix it, but it's a question of if we want to. And as your next representative, I'm telling you, as a businessman, I had to get my stuff in order every month to be able to take a paycheck. You all have to get your stuff in order every month as well. And as your next representative, I'm going to make sure that happens.
There's been a lot of talk about endorsements, and I love them. We've had a chance to have, I think, 2,501 people endorse us by giving us some money. What they're saying is, and a lot of these are business leaders that I know in the marketplace, and what they're saying is we don't want to send another politician to just take money, go through the same thing again. I'm a CEO. This is what I see. Our company is about investment banking. It's about economics and finance. That's my expertise. The problem with our debt is so big, it's almost mind-numbing. I've been in hundreds of conversations and meetings like this. When I talk about $40 trillion, nobody even knows what it means. We are at $2 trillion in deficit every year. This will be the first year in many years President Trump has now allowed us to reduce that deficit. The only way to ever get back to a balanced budget is to start reducing the deficit a little bit more. The only way to do that is to grow the country beyond inflation, period. So when we can grow the country, President Trump has a plan, grow it at 5%, keep inflation down at 2%. And when we grow, and he's done that now with tariffs, we had over several $100 billion come in, we can start reducing the deficit, which then will allow us to eventually get to a balanced budget. But it's years away. I had a chance to meet with Jody Arrington. He's unfortunately retiring. He's on the budget committee this year. And he handed me his book. He said, Ryan, this is my only regret after 8 years in Congress that I've championed a balanced budget and I've made no headway. And I said this, I said, Congressman, if God gives me the opportunity to serve this, I will take this mantle and fight for you because this is the consequence for our lives and the next generation.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to hit you with the next one if that's okay. I like to call this topic sedition and domestic terrorism.
Say it again.
Sedition and domestic terrorism. So the question is, the recent ICE shootings in Minnesota, justified or not, and should federal funds be withheld from states and sanctuary cities like the one we're in now, who refuse to cooperate with federal immigration policies and authorities?
You know, both the shootings that have happened here recently are just a complete tragedy. You know, the first one, I guess we're talking about the first one or both of them. Is that what you're referring to, or either one?
Either one, or your position?
No, this is very hard. You know, the first one was different. It had obviously a car hitting him. It turned into a weapon, and I think that was. This last one is very difficult. These are split-second decisions. This is the real problem and why it's happening. Because we have a governor there that's created sanctuary cities there. We had a President Biden that allowed in 20 million people in our country. They've now hoarded in these cities, and now we're sitting here fighting, trying, how do we get the criminals out? So we now have a problem because not only him, but the mayor has incited their entire population to try and keep ICE agents from doing their very job, and that's just trying to get the criminals out of the city. So every one of these motives that happen from our government is part of this culture war that we've been talking about. We need to make sure that we're deporting, make sure that we're telling people, follow the law. If you want to protest, stay on the side of the street, period. And this is how we have to lead again. It takes leadership, and President Trump is leading this the right way. But to get our country on the right track, we have to follow the law. President Trump is going to need leaders that are going to stand with him to make sure that we are not only keeping our nation secure, but so this never happens again, but we're leading in a place where we have the rule of law, we have our society back, and it's going to take true, I think, transcendent leaders to make sure we're doing that. President Trump reached across the aisle this week to the governor of Minnesota, and he said, hey, let's do this differently, and hopefully we'll see some progress there.
Thank you.
How did we get here as a country? I honestly ask you, how did we get here as a country? 323 BC, Diocletian said, divide and conquer. Ladies and gentlemen, we have forgotten the very meaning of being an American. We are now a faction of two separate countries living within one. The Democrats and the Republicans, the blue states and the red states. And while I am red as red can be, and I am proud to raise my family in Texas, we have got to remember that American lives shouldn't be colored as blue or red, and we are still Americans. And so, yes, it is a tragedy is what is happening across this country. And instead of pointing fingers, I think the Democrats and the Republicans both should stop pointing fingers, and they should get to work to bring this country together and say, we may have differences on policy, but let's work together to make this country work again and not have the country feel like it's ripped apart by its seams. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose more of our American identity and patriotism. What happened in Minnesota is absolutely disgusting, but I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. Fortunately for Mr. Waltz, and unfortunately we have a lot of Tim Waltzes waltzing around, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But we have to first remember that we are all Americans, and we have to have some sort of decency in this country. And as your next representative, it's about representing everybody in this district to the best of our ability. Thank you.
I have no interest in representing Democrats. That's not because I'm ugly or offensive. I don't like being called names. When they tried to force me to get the COVID vaccine, you remember, you were there, you remember the tyranny. You remember what they told us. They treated us like lepers, right? They have weaponized every institution that we pay for with our money to come after us. We're in a boxing match and the other guy's using a crowbar. They come after us. They try to destroy our lives. Why? Because we peacefully protest, right? On January 6th, Arctic Frost, Jack Smith's operation to basically eliminate conservative dissidents across the country, That's the most egregious example of the abuse of power I've ever seen. People's lives were destroyed, held in solitary confinement for months, years. And who's gone to prison for it? Nobody. These are the tools the other side used to fight against us. I am here to provide good government and good representation. But the left, they don't view me that way. The kind of good government that I want to offer that you and I agree with, they call it bigoted and backward and oppressive and Nazi-ish. And I am past trying to placate that in any way, shape, or form. My response to my conservative colleagues, to my conservative citizens and neighbors, is we're going to go and fight for the policies we know are good for our country, good for our communities. I absolutely support the efforts in Minnesota. I would back to the hilt the ICE officers that are enforcing our immigration laws. Why? Because I'm ugly and I like confrontation? No, these are tragedies. You never want to see somebody's life lost.
Thank you, Jace. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, the left got what it wanted. I mean, when you have a governor and a mayor that are calling ICE agents Gestapo and masked thugs, and then you've got leftists saying, we want blood in the streets to bring attention to this matter, the left, this is the fight that the left wants. So they will identify ICE agents, dox them, and then when the ICE agents start wearing masks to prevent from being doxxed, then they say, oh, masked thugs are in our cities. What garbage. And I'll tell you, I used to be a journalist, and what really ticks me off about this is the deranged media going, not all the media.
Thank you.
Most of the deranged media going along with this completely dishonest narrative that these people are out just, walking along in the park and, making dandelion bracelets, and then suddenly these masked thugs ran up and started shooting them. What a bunch of garbage. So the media needs to start doing a better job reporting the truth. The Minnesota mayor needs to stop calling ICE agents Gestapo. And in answer to your question, yes, stop federal funds going to Minnesota. Just stop it cold, and let's see if the Minnesota leaders stop with this inflammatory rhetoric that has led to this situation.
I agree with Binkley. Any loss of life under any circumstances is a tragedy. We don't want to see that happen. That being said, while most folks up here are not calling it what it is, and I've said this before, it is a counterinsurgency that is happening in Minneapolis right now. You can't identify it because you've not seen it, because you've not been in a combat zone. And I can tell you it's very well funded, it's very well organized. They're tracking them. Someone is funding them. We must follow the money. Ilhan Omar, the tens of millions of dollars, how is it that she enters Congress and she's worth negative $45,000 and now she's worth $30 million? That doesn't just happen overnight. And I say that because dark money is in Washington, D.C. There are folks on this panel, some have disclosed their FEC, some haven't, that have donated to PACs, that have received money from PACs. I can say, you can follow my money. It comes from donors. I have no PAC money. Because when you go to Washington, D.C., if you have PAC money, that means special interest, you are in their pocket. It begins and it ends there. Thank you.
So I'm an immigrant. I'm not a first-generation immigrant. I'm an actual immigrant. This is a country of immigrants, but this is also a country of laws. This is a country of laws and order. I followed immigration law. We waited for our political refugee status in Germany and came here with a green card. And some of the people that actually really, hate the fact that people are breaking immigration laws are people that are legal immigrants that followed all the rules. I think what's happening in Minnesota is a shame because people forget that the Democrats are the ones that opened the borders and allowed 20 million people here illegally. The same Democrats are telling people to break the immigration laws, and they're telling ICE to resist. This is a death sentence. Everyone knows you don't interfere with a police officer, let alone a federal police officer. So I think people like Ilhan Omar, like Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries, and many others, they have blood on their hands. Jace, I commend you for not getting vaccinated. I also refuse to get vaccinated. Unfortunately, I lived in New York. I traveled for a living, so I wasn't allowed to travel to many countries. I wasn't able to work. I couldn't even go to the restaurant and get a burger. And on January 6th, I actually took a day off from work, drove from New York to New Jersey, went and got 3 first aid kits and a bunch of canned foods, and I went on the Capitol to watch President Trump speak. And I was labeled an insurrectionist, and I tried to get fired from my job because I didn't break any laws. I took the day off from work. I exercised my First Amendment right of freedom of speech and my First Amendment right of freedom of assembly, and they went after me. And the same way that I went to Washington to hear President Trump speak, that's the way I plan on going to Washington and fight for this district and the people in this district.
Thank you, Abteen. Hope you all will indulge me and forgive me because we didn't talk about this, but I just wanted to clarifying follow-up. It could be just a show of hands. Given the situation on the ground today in Minnesota, as it exists today, raise your hand if you do support suspending federal funding to that state.
To what?
To the state of Minnesota, given the circumstances. Great, thank you. At this point, we're getting close to the end. If we could do a bit of a lightning round. I know we talked about doing a minute. If we could keep it more to 30 seconds on these answers, I'd appreciate it. Congressional term limits. Do you support? And please tell us how long you would stay in Congress if elected.
So I actually signed my pledge to keep 3 terms for the House of Representatives and 2 terms for the Senate. I've already signed it. We don't need people to go to Washington to try to be the next Nancy Pelosi. We don't need people to go there to try to become a 30 millionaire or 300 millionaire. And I think it's very important, whoever we send to Washington from this district is a business person and is not someone that's beholden to anyone, that's going to go there, take dark money, and go there and have to fall in line and become part of the swamp. It's absolutely important to be an independent person and not be part of the swamp.
I've signed the pledge. I agree on U.S. term limits. I talked a little bit about that earlier on. I feel we should extend that not only to elected officials, but also to the entire sewer in Washington, D.C. I shared that with you earlier. I feel that we shouldn't be beholden to PACs. We need to follow the money. There are folks on this stage that do accept PAC money or contribute to PACs. So we should keep it at 2, no more than 3 for congressmen, and we should keep it at 2 for senators. Thank you.
I've signed the pledge, and I've promised to just serve 2 terms, 4 years, and then I'm out of that hellhole. I've also pledged to put my holdings in a blind trust, so there's no way I could profit from any kind of.
That's the next question.
Yeah, so I support term limits, have signed the pledge. I think 5 to 10 years is a fine window. The only thing you want to avoid is to make sure that staff don't have more experience than the member, such that the person actually running the office is somebody who's not elected. That's the key consideration for that.
I've already signed the pledge myself. I'm a big believer. I just also, at the same token, I'm a believer it's not going to happen. Not trying to rain on our parades, but this is a system, and the system is designed for a certain reason. And like our other candidates expressed here, I think transparency on where money comes from is critical if you're going to vote for somebody. And if somebody doesn't have an FEC statement that's filed where it can be seen, ask the question why. We want to know why. Why? Why is it not seen? Why are you hiding it?
Thank you. I agree with term limits as well. I signed the pledge. I agree it should be 6, 8 years, somewhere in there for congressional. I also agree with Paul that it's likely never going to happen because they will never vote themselves out of a job. The real way to handle this is for you as a district to put somebody in office that you think is a statesman and not a politician. I believe our founders really envisioned this role at some point in time in your life. If you've had some level of success that you give back, that's why it's a 2-year term. I don't think they ever envisioned 20 and 30-year terms that people would suck the life out of that city forever. So it's time for us to put statesmen in office. I'm a CEO, I'm a business leader, I'm a pastor. This is my passion. I feel like calling right now.
Thank you, Ryan. I might get you to the next
one.
Would you support a ban on congressional insider trading? Same 30-second clock. A ban on congressional insider trading.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, We have people from which we already named here outperform Goldman Sachs, I think Nancy Pelosi did over the last 20 years. How did she do that? She's so brilliant. We absolutely need to put a ban to it.
You're supposed to go to serve the people, not to benefit from the office. I 100% support that.
Yeah, I agree.
I would strongly take issue with Ryan saying Nancy Pelosi is brilliant. I'll take issue with that. But yes, definitely we should.
We won't afford him the rebuttal on that one.
Right.
We just need to follow her stock trades, that's all.
Right. Definitely, we should already do that. There's a bill percolating right now. I think it's stalled in the Senate, and we've got to push that through.
Quick answer is yes. Thankfully, we have the Convention of States, that's Article 5. 20 states out of 34 have already passed it. So fingers crossed.
I definitely support banning insider trading. I'm a business person. I've never ran for any political office ever. I'm running because I think we need a lot of help in Washington. I actually have an idea that people should report their net worth, and when they leave office, whatever their increase in net worth is, they should be taxed 50% on that, and that money should be sent to veterans to help pay for their health care.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
I'll ask you just a couple more show of hands, just really quick questions before we get last couple more substantive ones. Show of hands, would you support legislation banning pharmaceutical advertising?
Yes.
Pharmaceutical advertising. Can you be more specific?
The United States is the only country that allows that, by the way.
Can you be a little
In
more?
terms of how we do it with broadcasts.
Commercial.
Sure.
Yeah.
A Viagra commercial.
It's quite the example.
Should Obamacare be repealed? Hands.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Do you support the permanent closure of the Department of Education?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I thought these might have consensus on most of these. Do you support permanently defunding NPR and PBS?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Bye, Mr. Rogers.
It should be registered as PACs.
Here's the last fun one. Should the courts find the Biden auto pen pardons were not legal, would you publicly support prosecuting Anthony Fauci for lying to Congress and Hunter Biden for corruption?
Yes.
Lock them up. Lock them up.
1,000%.
Lock them up.
Bet you.
I got one last one for you guys before we go to closing. From a very esteemed member of the audience who asked that I not identify him because I wanted him to ask the question. Give me 1 second here. And take 30 seconds to a minute on this one. What is the difference between a statesman and a politician?
I think a statesman is someone that's honest, that could come up here, doesn't have to rehearse, doesn't have to have notes, speaks from the heart, and knows how to rally and get people to support him or her and go out there and make a difference. A politician is exactly the opposite of a statesman, someone that's dirty and does we all know what a politician is.
Yes, I believe a statesman is someone that in this country believes not in red, not in blue, but in red, white, and blue. And then a politician is what's what DC's full of them. Throw a stone.
Yeah. Wow, DC is just full of politicians, and to me, it's somebody that is looking to see what the office can do for them instead of what they can do for the American people and bringing the American people together to find some real solutions to our problems. That's how I would identify it.
In the UK, they call them public ministers. There's a piece of me that likes that version. My granddaddy was a Southern Baptist pastor, and there's a certain amount of connection that the word minister implies. I think the job of a statesman is to be a member of his community, understand the values, share those values, and then be a part of the group that's leading in the direction that the community wants to go. So I think it's vision, yes. It's also courage and competence, because those values, that vision is not necessarily going to be shared by everybody. In our case, right, respect to Monty, like, okay, great, you want to be red, white, and blue. I'm done compromising with the left. I'm done placating them. I'm done pretending that they want anything other than my destruction, right? I mean, they are attempting to separate us from our kids, castrate them without our knowledge so that we can't have any grandkids, right? I mean, that's just one example of how crazy things have gotten. I have no interest in trying to placate that. We have a vision as conservatives. That's the direction that I want to lead, and I want to be a part of leading that direction.
Thank you, Jace.
I'm going to give you a clear and simple answer. We had a justice, famous justice, that ruled on the definition of pornography as, you know it when you see it. Okay? The difference between being a politician and a statesman, a politician will say what it takes to get elected and make the deals it takes to get elected. A statesman are going to do the things to look after the people in the district and do the right things to serve the people.
I had a chance about a week ago to visit with the mayor of Rockwall, centerpiece of this district, and I was glad to get his endorsement. But he shared a story about Ralph Hall, who's been a leader in Congress for just decades, and he served the people. And I think that's the big difference between a statesman and a politician, somebody that's really willing to serve and not just be heard, but also to hear, to make sure they're listening, make sure that they are representing, because that's the job of a congressional representative, to represent you to DC and not the other way around. When I hear about leaders like that, that's what inspires me. I've been a pastor, I've been a business leader, I've tried to create jobs, I've tried to serve my entire life. We've tried to do that with our kids and our family. And I feel called right now to bring that level of service to this district. It needs that. We don't need any more politicians. We've had people in this district already. It's led by a current representative, Julie Johnson. It's time that we bring real change that represents your values, and I'm standing for that. I would appreciate your thoughts in helping me get there, because this district, this city, our whole area needs leadership that represents your heart.
Ryan, and we're going to close now, folks. Everybody has 2 minutes, and you are up.
Thank you. You know, it's been a great opportunity to be with you for a few minutes. You know, I felt a calling to really get involved in leadership in government for really this one reason. Our nation is completely broken. You know, I've thought often about where we're headed and what is our generation going to be known for 50 years from now. The greatest generations are known for what they sacrificed for our generation. The greatest generation was known for what they gave for our freedom. And what are we going to be known for? We are going to be known, I believe this, unless we have true leadership that truly brings change to our economy, that brings God back into our culture, we might be known as the generation 50 years from now that prospered the most, but sacrificed the least. We've had more wealth brought in our generation than the previous two combined. And I believe this, it's time for leaders to rise. I believe we need transformational leaders in Congress that can stand along President Trump and bring a CEO's perspective to how we're going to create jobs, balance the budget, change health care, how we're going to create laws to protect our children and stand up and make sure that we are defying the ungodly nature that's out there today. I'm Ryan Binkley. I'm running for this district because we need a spiritual revival and we need an economic revival and we need it in our country and we need it now. I'm Ryan Binkley. I appreciate your support.
This is about you, but it's also about what your representative is going to believe, defending you and representing you. And I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe without the Second Amendment, we will not have the first. I believe COVID-19 was a sham. The new Green Deal is a scam. And the Trump impeachment, a kangaroo court. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to remove the globalist boot from the voice of free speech and come and represent this district as your next congressman. I wear this ring because the year that we won this ring, we never lost a game at home. We never lost a game at home. And this district for me is home. And I think as any leader, it's very important for you to have somebody where this district is home. Now, we have a lot of good candidates on stage here right now. They're great, and I will endorse and support all of them. But the elephant in the room is that we have certain candidates that they can't call this home. And I would just say as a leader, I would not ask anybody to do something that I am not willing to do. And as a leader, I would say it's very important that if you can't vote for yourself, how can you expect or ask somebody to vote for you? We talked a little bit about staying connected and not having hypocrisy. And I just think that in this race, having somebody that lives in the district and is going to represent our families and us is an imperative thing Because when it comes down to it, I drive on the roads with my family. You'll see me in the district eating at the restaurants. You will have access. And most importantly, I'm accountable to the laws and the conditions that I make. And that's what this race comes down to. We saw in COVID, a lot of people, they said the laws didn't apply to me, and they lived a whole separate lifestyle. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's on the voting ballot right now for this district.
So I've mentioned a couple times there were 5 new Republican districts created by the Texas legislature this past cycle. And I was grateful that finally Republicans went on offense to do with the Democrats what they've been doing to us for so long, and gerrymandering blue states like California, New York, and Illinois. You can tell from some of the things I've said that I get a little passionate about some of this. I get a little fire in my belly. And I'd like to share with you just very briefly kind of where that comes from. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. My granddaddy was a Southern Baptist pastor. For the Baptists in the room, I was in church twice on Sundays and every Wednesday night. Something that I think the Lord has called us to do as believers is not to shrink away from our civic obligations. Sometimes, the left will come at us and say, oh, aren't you supposed to, for example, welcome the stranger? Doesn't mean that you should just open your borders to whoever wants to come in. And I say to that, no. And I point to passages like the Apostle Paul, who says, look, if you don't provide for your own, especially those in your own household, you're worse than an infidel. You've denied the faith. I look at what the prophet Jeremiah said to the children of Israel who were carried away captive to Babylon, the city of Satan. They've been carried away, and Jeremiah comes to them, and what do you think he's going to tell them? Oh, this is how long you got to be here. Just repent, and the Lord will rescue you and take you back home. That's not what he says. He says, this is what the Lord says to you, captives in Babylon. I want you to build houses, plant gardens, give your children away in marriage. Take their children in marriage. Why? Because in the peace of that city will you have peace. That's an offensive mindset. We are not fighting a rear guard action. That's not what we're to be about. We're the vanguard. We're supposed to take ground and hold ground and move forward. That's what conservatives should be doing. That's what I build my professional life doing. And if you agree with that, I'd be grateful if you would vote for Jace Yarbrough. I'll be number 1 on your ballot in Dallas. Thank you.
Seeing these brilliant guys up here, I think you've got a little bit of a dilemma. How do I decide between all these smart guys on this panel? I'd submit you look at 2 things. Who is somebody that you can trust to be a conservative when they get to Washington? I mean, everybody up here is talking MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. I was a MAGA guy when this district was minus 31 and going against the Democrat machine. I was a MAGA guy when it was very politically painful to be a MAGA guy. I'm still a MAGA guy now. I'll be a MAGA guy in Washington. And that is so important because time and time again, we've seen people say things on the campaign trail and then they get to Washington or they get to Austin and they betray us. Time and time again, we've seen that. That's why Congress has such a low approval rating, because we've seen people betray us. I will fight for you with every ounce of my being in Washington, D.C. I'm not going to back down. I'll never back down. The second thing that's important is who can win. Well, we've got to make sure that we can bring it home in November. Like I said, we've got over 50 GOP precinct chairs that have endorsed us. We have over 300 volunteers. We've got the Army and the team that can win this in November, and very, very much looking forward to bringing CD 32 home to the GOP where it belongs. And I'll tell you, when we were out block walking 2 years ago, there's a guy out working on his bicycle on his front porch. And I introduced myself, and he looked at me, he said, "Are you with President Trump?" I thought, here we go, it's on. I said, "I sure am. His policies are great for America." He said, "You're my guy, put your sign over here." That's what we need to bring back this seat for the Republican Party.
So there are a lot of candidates on the stage, and a lot of us believe in a lot of common sense policies. In fact, we'll just tell them to you in a couple different ways. I don't believe that there's any policy that makes any common sense without faith. And when I talk about faith, I'm not just talking about my strong belief in doctrine, the Lord. I'm also talking about trust. And so I find it hard, as much as I like every candidate on the stage, I find it hard to trust some of the candidates because some candidates have run for office before, run against Trump, and they've called him a divider. Some candidates here have received PAC money, and they don't disclose that information. Some candidates have run for office and don't live in this district. And I applaud what Bondar said. If you don't live here, how can you ask someone to vote for you if you're not invested in the district? Whether you have companies here or not, you don't live here. It's special to us and important to us because I do live here. I've been fighting since the district was hard, and I'm fighting now when it's a little bit easier because it flipped. I ask that you consider everyone, but that you know that I have fought for you whether you realize it or not. I fought for you when the district was hard. I fought for you overseas, and I'll fight for you in Washington, D.C. to protect your property rights, your water rights, to secure funding to ensure that we have the correct infrastructure spending and more money in everyone's pockets for everyday Texans, ranchers, farmers, and small business owners. I ask for your vote. My name is Monty Montanez. Visit montyforcongress.com. That's FOR, not the number 4. Thank you.
We live in the greatest country in the world. We also live in the best state in the union. And I arguably said Dallas is the best city in Texas. As a political refugee who moved here as a child, I've had the odds stacked against me my entire life. I've always been an underdog, but I've always fought. This past summer, I got baptized. Actually, I got baptized with Bryce. I'm a new follower of Jesus Christ, and one of my personal goals is to bring Christianity to 90 million people in Iran, whether I win this race or not. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to be on a ministry called Iran Alive, and this is the time that actually the people in Iran need our prayers the most. There's 3 to 10 million people in Iran that are Christians that have to hide their Christian faith because they could be killed just by virtue of them having converted to Christianity. A lot of people don't have internet connection, so we're broadcasting into Iran, just hoping people are getting on their Starlink satellites. I talk to friends that are in Iran today on a nightly basis. During the day, they're fighting. I don't know if I'm going to talk to them. They're going to be alive tomorrow. It is absolutely important that we don't let radical Islam come to this community. I think this is the topic du jour. Everyone's talking about it. Jace mentioned, the governor all of a sudden cares about it. For 3 years, he's allowed the Muslim games here in Texas. All of a sudden, it's on top of his agenda. All of a sudden, H-1B is on top of his agenda. But this is something that I grew up with. I grew up in pain from Islamic radicalism. Something as simple as playing chess was outlawed. Just basic things. People in Iran, all they want is be able to go, sing and dance and play music. It's illegal. They can't sing and dance and play music. They just want to be a part of the West. We cannot let this community have radical Islam come to this community. And this is not going to be a topic that it's going to be the topic du jour. It's going to go away. This is what I lived under, and I'm going to fight for it. And I've lived all around the world, and I'm not going to let radical Islam or Marxism come here to our communities. I'm going to fight for you in District 32. So please vote for me.
Hey, Chris. I think I was addressed when he was talking about somebody's ran against President Trump, and I like the
Fair enough.
Like
Fair enough. Yep, it was directed at you.
A lot of people know this already, but I actually did run for president of the United States, and a lot of people ask me this question: why in the world would you do that? And I understand that. I had a chance to meet with Congressman Brian Jack in D.C. a few months ago, and he helped run President Trump's campaign. And he thanked me, and he said, Ryan, you're one of the few that didn't say anything negative. And he said this: stay with your message that you're about this one issue, affordability. I was one like Doug Burgum, Vivek Ramaswamy, and even Kennedy on the other side that didn't say anything negative about President Trump because I had this message in my heart: our country's in trouble financially. And I shouted that like a Paul Revere moment, and that was kind of my heart behind getting ahead of what we're seeing today.
That's your 30, Ryan. So
today we have an affordability crisis, and so my heart in this is to make sure that we have leadership today that's going to address one of the most critical issues that we're all facing, a financial crisis that's looming, and it's going to take leadership that's going to address it. That's why I ran, and that's why I'm standing and running today, because we need that type of revival moment, and I'm prepared to lead that.
I think somebody should correct 2 things from that statement, if I may.
It was, I don't think was anything was perceived as directed at you?
That's yeah.
Those were,
yeah,
those were the rules we started. I'd actually like to stop here and I'll tell you why, gentlemen, because you are all that, gentlemen. And thank you so much for being here and the honor to allow me to moderate this discussion. It was incredibly respectful, polite, civil. The fact that we only had one of those interjections, I think, is a very positive situation tonight. I couldn't be more impressed personally, and I think that regardless of who wins this primary, the residents and taxpayers of the Congressional District 32 are going to be much better served than they have been. So how about a huge round of applause for these guys?